He thought she was just another driver breaking the law. But the moment she pulled out her badge, his entire attitude changed. This wasn't just a routine traffic stop. It was a lesson he would never forget, and neither will you. It was a clear, warm Tuesday morning in the suburbs of Richmond, Virginia. Birds chirped, school buses rolled out, and families bustled with their routines. But for Agent Maya Carter, this wasn't just another day. It was a mission. Clad in a navy blue suit and crisp white shirt, Maya looked like any other professional woman headed to work. Her car, a black Nissan sedan, was clean, modest, and unmarked. No flashing lights, no security detail, no backup, just Maya, her experience, and her instincts. But there was something else, too. Hidden beneath her blazer, clipped securely inside her jacket pocket, was a badge. A golden FBI emblem that granted her access, authority, and responsibility. Maya was deep in undercover work, investigating a white-collar crime ring suspected of using car dealerships to launder money. Today's plan was simple. Follow a lead, observe a suspect, and report back. She had run this playbook before. Undercover assignments had become her specialty over the past 5 years, especially because of how easily she could blend in. Most people didn't expect a black woman to be the one running a federal investigation, and Maya had learned to use that to her advantage. But blending in had its price. At 8:13 a.m., just 2 blocks from her target's neighborhood, Maya glanced at her rearview mirror and noticed flashing red and blue lights. A local police cruiser had pulled in behind her. At first, she assumed it must be for someone else. She hadn't done anything wrong. No speeding, no signal missed, nothing. But the cruiser's siren chirped, and the officer motioned for her to pull over. She exhaled slowly. "Not now," she muttered under her breath. Still, as always, she stayed composed. She turned on her hazard lights, pulled to the curb, and placed both hands on the steering wheel where they could be seen. The officer, a tall, broad-shouldered white man, approached her window. He didn't introduce himself, didn't explain the stop. His eyes scanned her like she was already guilty of something. "License and registration," he said sharply. "Of course, officer," Maya responded, reaching slowly into her purse. She handed over her ID, which, due to the undercover operation, listed an alias and a local address tied to her cover identity. It wasn't fake, but it didn't scream federal agent either. That was intentional. It protected her cover and her mission. The officer glanced at the ID and frowned. "This your car?" "Yes," Maya answered. He stared at her for a second too long. Something in his expression shifted, like he was trying to figure out what didn't add up. Was it the suit, her calm demeanor, or something else entirely? Without saying much more, he walked back to his cruiser. Maya watched him through the side mirror, her senses sharpening. He was on the radio, looking back at her car, visibly annoyed. Minutes passed. Finally, he returned, this time with more force in his tone. "I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle." Maya blinked. "Is there a reason, officer?" "Step out. Now." She knew this wasn't normal protocol. She wasn't being combative. She had complied fully. But she also knew better than to escalate. Unbuckling slowly, she stepped out of the car, keeping her hands visible. Her training taught her everything about de-escalation. Still, this moment felt off. "Put your hands on the hood." "Sir." "Now." His voice thundered, and neighbors across the street peeked from behind their curtains. A few passing cars slowed down. Maya could feel all eyes on her. She placed her palms gently on the hood, heart pounding. Not because she was afraid, she was prepared, but because she knew how quickly things like this could turn into headlines. The officer began patting her down. Rough, unapologetic. He didn't ask for consent. He didn't explain anything. And just as he reached toward the inside pocket of her blazer, where her FBI badge rested, Maya took a breath. Everything was about to change. The officer's gloved hand hovered near the inside pocket of Maya's blazer, the pocket where her FBI credentials rested quietly, waiting for the right moment. Maya had let it go this far on purpose. Her job required patience, calculation, and sometimes restraint under pressure. But this was crossing a line. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," she said, her voice calm but firm. The officer paused. "Excuse me?" You're about to grab something you'll wish you hadn't. Her words didn't come from arrogance. They came from training and truth. But the officer didn't listen. With a quick motion, he reached in and pulled out the black leather badge holder, flipping it open with the same dismissiveness he'd used since the moment he approached her. Then everything froze. His eyes locked onto the glinting gold badge. Federal Bureau of Investigation. Her photo. Her real name. Special Agent Maya Carter. For a moment, the neighborhood seemed to go completely silent. The tension in the air was thicker than ever. The officer's mouth opened slightly, as if trying to form an apology, but no sound came out. "Your FBI?" he finally asked, clearly shaken. "Yes," she replied, standing up straight, reclaiming the authority that was hers all along. "And you've just conducted an unauthorized search of a federal agent during an active undercover operation." He took a step back, the confidence in his posture gone. I didn't know. You didn't ask." Her voice was sharper now, laced with controlled anger. She didn't need to shout. She didn't need to threaten. The badge and the truth did all the talking. "I was just following procedure," he stammered, his eyes darting to his patrol car like he was looking for backup or an escape. Maya raised an eyebrow. "Tell me which part of procedure involves pulling someone from their car, searching them without probable cause, and doing so without a word of explanation?" He had no answer. "You profiled me," she added. "You made an assumption, and you acted on it without facts. That's not just bad policing, it's dangerous." The officer was sweating now. The confidence with which he had demanded she step out of the vehicle had turned into pure panic. "I thought the ID looked suspicious." "You mean because it didn't match what you expected someone like me to carry? Or because I don't look like your idea of a federal agent?" Silence again. For the first time, the officer seemed to realize how serious this was, not just legally, but morally. His bias had turned a routine moment into something far worse. Maya could have reported him right then and there. One phone call, and he'd be on immediate review. But instead, she made a decision that surprised even herself. "I'm not going to escalate this," she said. "Not because I can't, but because I know what happens when power is abused, and I'm not here to ruin someone's career." He blinked in disbelief. "But you need to think long and hard about what just happened. If I were anyone else, if I didn't have that badge, how would this story have ended?" She didn't need an answer. She already knew it. The officer nodded slowly, his face pale. Maya walked back to her car, reclipped the badge to her inside pocket, and sat back behind the wheel. Before driving off, she rolled down the window and said one final thing. "Next time, do your job without jumping to conclusions. Because the person you stop might not be who you think they are, and they just might be watching you too." Then she drove away, calm, composed, and more determined than ever. But that officer? He would never forget her face, her voice, or her badge. Agent Maya Carter drove away slowly, her heart still steady, but her mind racing. She replayed the interaction over and over, not because she was shaken, but because she was focused. She had been trained to anticipate threats, read body language, detect deception, and stay calm under pressure. But nothing in her FBI training made it easy to swallow what had just happened. Being treated like a suspect for simply existing in the wrong neighborhood, wearing a tailored suit, and driving a nice car while being black. Still, she couldn't afford to stay in that moment emotionally. Not today. She had a job to do, a real one, and she wasn't going to let one officer's ego or ignorance derail her mission. Maya turned onto a quieter road, heading toward the observation point where she was supposed to monitor the target of her investigation. She was back in control now, her mind back in agent mode. But the incident had cracked something open. The badge she carried had protected her, yes. But what if she hadn't shown it? What if she were just Maya, no title, no shield, just another woman on the road? She thought of her younger brother, Jamal, 21, just starting college, often borrowing her car, often driving through neighborhoods just like this. No badge, no backup. The thought made her grip the steering wheel tighter. But just as she was settling back into the rhythm of her mission, her agency-issued phone buzzed. A text from HQ. "Change of plan. Target is on the move. Proceed to 12th and Jefferson. Maintain distance." She nodded, already adjusting her route. The assignment had just shifted and she needed to be at her best. 10 minutes later, she parked on the far end of a grocery store parking lot across from the suspect's known associate's garage. She tilted her rearview mirror slightly, adjusted her earpiece, and leaned back casually. From the outside, she looked like someone waiting for curbside pickup. Inside, she was a lioness. A black SUV pulled up moments later, exact make and model they had flagged. The suspect stepped out. Male, early 40s, bald, nervous. Maya began snapping photos quietly, logging timestamps. This was the good stuff, the kind of detail that could close a case. Then, out of nowhere, a voice startled her. "Ma'am, is everything all right?" Another police officer. This one younger, polite in tone, but clearly curious. He hadn't drawn a weapon. Yet, Maya blinked, lowering the camera. "I'm fine, officer. Just waiting for someone." He nodded slowly, but looked toward the notepad and camera on her passenger seat. "What's all this for?" She knew she could flash the badge now and end it. But she didn't. Not yet. "Photography project," she said with a polite smile. "Urban environments." He smiled back faintly, unconvinced. "Just make sure you're not filming people without permission," he said, and began to walk away. Maya breathed out slowly. That could have gone a different way. It reminded her how thin the line was between normal and disaster, how fragile safety could be, even with a badge in her pocket, and how easily the same day could turn into two stories, one of quiet heroism and one of injustice. She stayed for another 20 minutes, finished her surveillance, and then finally drove back toward the field office. As soon as she arrived, she walked straight into her supervisor's office and closed the door. "I need to file a report," she said, "but not about the target, about the police." Her supervisor raised an eyebrow. "I was profiled this morning, searched without cause, even after handing over ID. I want it documented, not just for me, for the next person." He didn't argue, because when an FBI agent gets profiled by local police during an active operation, that's not just a mistake, it's a systemic flaw, one that needed to be on record. Back at the Richmond FBI field office, Maya sat across from her supervisor, Special Agent in Charge Daniel Brooks. A seasoned leader in his 50s, Brooks had seen his fair share of complex cases, interagency disputes, and even the quiet racism that still lived in certain corners of law enforcement. But this hit differently. "You're absolutely right to report this," he said after listening carefully to her summary. "Send me a full write-up, and I'll forward it to Internal Affairs. We'll handle it from our end." Maya nodded, but her eyes stayed locked on his. That officer didn't just embarrass himself. He compromised my cover, delayed my operation, and profiled me with zero evidence. It could have gone bad in seconds. Brooks looked down, clearly weighing something. "You want to file a complaint directly with Richmond PD?" Maya paused, then shook her head. "Not yet. Right now, I just want the Bureau to have this on file. But I'm not sweeping it under the rug either. I want to handle this the right way, professionally." It wasn't fear that stopped her from escalating. It was focus. She had a job to finish, and letting personal anger override mission goals was not who Maya Carter was. But something inside her had shifted. This wasn't the first time she'd faced bias, but it was the first time it had intersected so violently with her job. A position she'd earned through years of hard work, sacrifice, and proving herself again and again in a system that wasn't designed for people like her to rise. It wasn't about that one officer anymore. It was about what he represented, an entire mindset that saw her skin before her badge, her gender before her credentials. Later that night, Maya sat alone in her apartment. Her surveillance work had been submitted. The suspect's meeting was being analyzed. On paper, it had been a productive day, but her heart felt heavy. She scrolled through her phone, looking at photos of her academy graduation. All those proud moments came rushing back. Her mother crying in the front row, her father shaking hands with the bureau director, her younger siblings watching her with wide-eyed admiration. That day, she had felt unstoppable. Yet today, a local officer had reduced her to nothing more than a suspicious person behind the wheel. She shook her head. "No, I'm not letting this define me," she said to herself. The next morning, she received a call from Agent Brooks. "Hey, just got word. That officer's supervisor reviewed your report. They want to set up a meeting to formally apologize and go over proper protocol. You don't have to do it, but the offer's on the table. Maya took a long breath. Let's do it. Not because I need an apology, but because they need to hear the truth from me, face to face. A week later, she sat in a small conference room at the Richmond Police Department. Across from her sat the officer who had searched her, Officer Blake. He looked uncomfortable, perhaps even ashamed. His captain sat beside him, hands clasped tightly. Maya didn't gloat. She didn't demand sympathy. She spoke clearly and with purpose. What happened wasn't just a misstep. It was a pattern. I've seen it before. I've lived it. But the difference is, this time I had a badge. Next time, someone else might not. And you need to think about that. Blake lowered his eyes. I understand. I made assumptions. It won't happen again. I hope not, Maya replied. Because next time, someone's life could depend on it. It was a long silence. The meeting ended respectfully. No drama. No shouting. But Maya walked out of that room stronger. Not just as an agent, but as a woman who chose courage over silence. Because when power meets prejudice, truth must speak louder than fear. Weeks passed. The investigation that Agent Maya Carter had been working on finally wrapped up. Arrests were made. The money laundering ring was exposed. Her report played a critical role in taking down the operation. But something else lingered, something that stayed with her longer than the case ever could. It was that moment on the side of the road. The moment her identity, her hard-earned position, her very safety had been placed in the hands of someone who hadn't taken a second to ask the right questions. That moment had started as an insult, turned into a confrontation, and ended with a badge that silenced everything but spoke volumes. It wasn't just a personal experience. It was a reflection of a larger reality. One evening, Maya found herself at a youth leadership seminar, invited by a colleague to speak about career paths in federal service. As she stood in front of a group of curious, determined young people, many of them young women of color, she realized the power of what she had lived through. She didn't open with her resume. She didn't list her awards. She told the story, not as a victim, but as a reminder. Someone once pulled me over because they couldn't believe a black woman in a suit driving a clean car could be anything but suspicious, she said, looking around the room. But what stunned them wasn't my tone or my attitude. It was the badge, the authority, the truth of who I am. The room was silent. Wide eyes, a few heads nodding slowly. I didn't need to yell to be powerful. I didn't need revenge. I needed them to see that their assumptions could have cost us both a lot more than a few minutes on the side of the road. After the talk, a teenage girl approached her. I've never met a black woman in the FBI before, she said quietly. Maya smiled. Now you have, and maybe one day, someone will say the same to you. That moment, those few words, meant more to her than any case she'd ever closed. Because the true victory wasn't just surviving that traffic stop or winning the investigation. The real victory was using it to change something, to inspire someone, to remind people that power doesn't come from shouting back, but from knowing who you are and refusing to let the world define you differently. Later, Maya reflected on how many people go through life never being seen for who they really are, only for what others assume. She was lucky. Her badge had stopped the situation from spiraling. But what if she'd been off duty? What if she hadn't been trained to stay calm under pressure? What if she'd been someone else? These were the questions that pushed her forward, not with bitterness, but with purpose. A purpose to lead, to educate, to protect, and most importantly, to be visible. To show the next generation that not only do they belong in places of power, they're needed there. She was no longer just Special Agent Maya Carter. She had become something more. A symbol, a story, a voice, a mirror that showed people a deeper truth about justice, identity, and quiet courage. In that one moment, when a badge flipped open and stunned a man who had judged her too quickly, became the moment that changed everything. Movie camera, if this story moved you, inspired you, or made you think. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Moral Mirror, and hit that bell so you never miss a story that matters.